Can I just tell you something? Can I just tell you something? What Maya is saying here continues even today. Sad but true, isn't it? I can certainly relate to what she's saying here. You know, I was born in rural Mississippi at a time when Jim Crow laws had been outlawed. Those horrible, cruel laws had been stricken, taken off the books. They were no longer valid. They no longer governed the behavior of folks in the South. Or that's what they wanted us to believe. But in reality, life was still lived as if those laws were still in full and furious force. So you might say, well, that was then, and this is now. Yes, you're right. That was then, and this is now. But just a few days ago, when I was ministering to this cohort of leaders that I told you about earlier in the show, these leaders who have been called to work as public servants, policemen, firefighters, councilmen and women, leaders in our schools, leaders with our youth, leaders in the military, these people were called to serve. You hear me? In that room, there were a handful of people of color. 2 of them were African American. I shared my own story of being born in Mississippi and having come of age during the turbulence of the civil rights movement. Now get this. I want you to hear me. Hear me on this. To a person, all the people of color had a similar story as mine. All the people of color. Some of them were born and raised as 3rd, 4th, and 5th generation in immigrant families. Yet they all shared a similar story of age and having to become possibilities to themselves because the mainstream culture didn't want to recognize or validate them. I heard the same story from some of the white people in the room who had been born dirt poor like I was, right? In many places, we are still treated as though we don't matter, as though we're invisible, still treated as if we don't exist, still treated as if we are a blip on a page that can easily be obscured or misplaced or discounted or sometimes just simply erased altogether. I pinch myself every day, because I get to work with folks like this as part of what I do. As a teacher, as a businesswoman, as a creative artist, as a social artist, I get to make a difference in my own life so that I can make a difference in theirs. Now, I have to tell you something about Dr. Angelou. Years ago, when I first started studying her poems and her life, she was my role model. At that time in my life, I didn't know how to describe my work. Well, that's not totally true. I knew how to describe it, but I didn't know how to describe it in a way that other folks who didn't look like me could deal with. You see, I was working in the high technology sector. Yes, that was me. I mean, you can imagine me working in corporate America, right? I did for 23 years. In fact, I was the highest ranking African American female executive when I left corporate America and started my own company. Now, these days, I'm an executive coach, a speaker, an organizational consultant, and I know because I felt that God has a sense of humor. Now, why do I say that? Because when I look back at my life, when I look back at my life experience, I can tell you, he put me in the wilderness, okay? He put me in the wilderness, in the desert, on raging whitewater rivers, so that I could learn what I needed, so that I could learn what I needed to know to do the work I'm doing now. How cool is that? I'm just telling you, my God is amazing. Now, I think we have time today for another poem by Miss Maya. It's called Caged Bird. And in this poem, she borrows from another great soul and poet. She borrows images and metaphors, even the central image of the caged bird. She borrows from a poem called Sympathy by Paul Laurence Dunbar. Miss Maya's poem is called Caged Bird. The free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wings in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied. So he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with fearful trill of the things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on a distant hill. For the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade wind soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on a distant hill. For the caged bird sings of freedom. That image, that metaphor of a caged bird appears also in Maya's first autobiographical book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Now, during last week's show, I paid tribute to Lucille Clifton. And during that show, I mentioned a beautiful poem by William Carlos Williams, a poem called Asphodel. Williams says it is difficult to get the news from poems, though men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. Miss Maya's poems remind me that inside of every poem is a bit of news. News that shines the light on what it means to be human. And that she does. She reminds us of what it means to be human. On our next show, I'm going to continue to celebrate this awesome American, this awesome African-American human being. I want to share just a little bit more of her life, more of her work, and just to celebrate Ms. Maya, Dr. Maya Angelou. We celebrate you during Black Heritage Month. We celebrate you every single day. We celebrate the majesty and the sweet music of your amazing life. And we express our deep, deep gratitude for showing us what legacy living is all about. Now, as you know, I like to celebrate Black History Month, Black Heritage Month, not only during the month of February, but every single day. If you missed last week's show or any part of this week's broadcast, you can listen to the recording at your convenience. You can even listen to it on the go. Check it out at www.talknetworkradio.com/legacy living. That's LEGACYLIVING, www.talknetworkradio.com. That's a mouthful, isn't it? www.talknetworkradio.com/legacy living, LEGACYLIVING. Now, before I close today, I want to thank each of you again for tuning in to today's show, for allowing me to share a bit of my journey with you about what legacy living really is and what it's all about. Not just living and learning, but living and learning and serving, so that you make a difference in your own life and in the lives of others. It's about being on purpose every single day, 365, 24/7. Legacy living is one of the many ways to make your life count. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Burgess, and this has been Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. Please join me again next week, right here on Talk Network Radio, for another show of Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. We're here again next Wednesday, 10 a.m., right here, Talk Network Radio. Don't just count the days in your life. Make the days in your life count. That's what legacy living is all about. Have a fantastic day, and remember, make the days in your life count. God bless.